So this is the first video that I'll be doing regarding Linux. I just wanted to start off with my desktop of choice recently, which is the SuSe Leap, which I'm incredibly impressed with for a number of reasons, and I just want to go through why. The I'll start off with the bad. I was pretty much excited when I first heard that this distribution was coming out. Basically, I hate setting up Linux desktops simply because I don't get much out of the knowledge I gain from getting them up and running, and I just find it, the whole thing sort of tedious. And once it's set up how I like it, I'm happy and I can kind of get on with my life. And I read some of the reviews that were online of this distribution, and people were saying, it's pretty unstable. They were having all sorts of problems when it first came out, which is rather typical of OpenSUSE distros. When they first come out, they sort of suffer from a few teething issues for the first couple of months. So I generally like to stay, 4 months, let them sort of simmer for 4 months, and then I'll come in and do an update. And Bob's your uncle. They're generally pretty stable. Up until now, though, OpenSUSE has been only supported for 18 months. So if you take off that sort of 4-month baking period, it's only leaves you with about 12 months, and then you've got to reinstall your desktop if you go with OpenSUSE. So for that reason, I used to actually pay SUSE $50 a year to get their enterprise desktop distribution. They gave you support for 10 years, so you would never have to reinstall. Now, the problem I found with that was the packages that they give you are pretty minimal that they support. Now, it's extremely stable. I never had an issue with stability-wise, but I was forever going to third-party repositories to get the software I actually wanted to run, which to me, sort of defeated the purpose. I'm paying for a sort of enterprise-grade distro, and I'm putting third-party stuff on. So I was excited with this release because it's the first merge release where they're actually using SuSe Linux Enterprise as the kernel base and the sort of main stuff, and they've now conglomerating all the third-party stuff that's sort of more cutting edge around the sides. And frankly, it's great. So I just want to start off with some of the issues I actually did have, and they were all installation issues, but once I had actually installed, everything was fine. So I'm just going to go into the main control panel here. So SuSe gives you a control panel. These are sort of just GUI wrappers around the text configuration. I like this a lot more than the Ubuntu way, simply because it's a bit loosely coupled in the sense that, if you change stuff on the text or config files in Linux, it's reflected here on the GUIs, whereas the Ubuntu model seems to be like you can't touch text files, and I just don't like that in a Linux environment. So this is how it's all laid out. Now, the software repositories, this is something that you want to sort out when you install. So I'll just load them up. So you've got the standard ones here. Now, I've added a few ones from proprietary vendors here, VLC. So due to the fact that SUSE is a enterprise grade operating system, there's some legality with shipping codecs. So VLC comes with the base repositories, but to get out of legal hoo-ha, there's a third-party one that they'll give you, which has all the codecs and whatnot. So if you use the one out of the box, it's pretty rubbish because you can't play much anyway, which kind of defeats the purpose of VLC. In addition, highly recommend you install this Pacman repo, and if you've got an NVIDIA driver, I think there's one for ATI as well, install the NVIDIA ones. So this is the URL, the OpenSUSE additional package repositories. Go to there and definitely install the things you need. So with NVIDIA, the good thing about it is hardware acceleration is installed by default. You don't need to actually add a repo, and it will recognize your NVIDIA card. It's just a base driver though, so if you really want to get more enhanced performance, download this, and you've obviously then got all the typical NVIDIA stuff that you would see pretty much on a Windows environment. Okay, so that just gives you a bit more control. The other great thing about SUSE is I've looked at I've used Red Hat once as a desktop distribution. I didn't like it simply because hardware isn't really maintained. Now, Red Hat's a great server distribution. In fact, it's my favorite server distribution. SuSe is my favorite desktop distribution. The wonderful thing about SuSe is when I update my kernel, this NVIDIA repo keeps it all in check. So I can get a new kernel from SuSe, NVIDIA ships with their kernel to in sync. So I'm not doing stuff like compiling from source. I don't learn anything from it. It's just a pain. I hated it in Red Hat when I'd load up a new kernel update, and lo and behold, there again, I've got to run a script, compile my drivers and whatnot. It's just, more rebooting, more stuffing around. And like I said, I just want to get on with my life. So in terms of hardware capabilities, look, I found that went really well with all my hardware. The only issue is it doesn't ship with the driver for my printer. I have a CLP 300. Someone has written an open source driver which I also got working for SuSe Linux Enterprise. I did try and put the out of the box, I think, CLP 400 driver and labeled it 300N on through this GUI. It didn't work. The only geeky stuff I really have to do when I can be bothered later on is sit down for half an hour or so and configure cups by the command line. It's not something I do regularly, so I sort of tend to put it off. Again, desktops are not very rewarding. So I will obviously get that driver, the open source driver that someone wrote, and compile it. I donated him $10 last time to say thanks. What else? So yeah, in terms of problems, so two problems I experienced, and these were only due to setup. I'll just open up a terminal. Okay, so two problems that I had were when I loaded it up on VirtualBox, it fired up pretty much instantly. Now, something to do with my hardware, it took the setup application literally 10 minutes to probe everything before the GUI came up. If you experience the same thing, I highly recommend you Control Alt F1 to F7. Have a look at all the consoles that are going on. It will tell you a lot of information that the GUI console isn't telling you. You can switch in Linux between various consoles, and you'll actually get to see all the goings on. Now, I would show you that myself now, but obviously this screen catcher utility is bound by the GUI, so I can't do that. But take my word for it, if you're on a Linux console now, type in Control Alt F1 or F2 or F3 and cycle through to F7 is usually your GUI, and you'll see generally once it's booted up just command prompts, but during setup there's a lot of diagnostic information, and I could actually see that the setup application was probing my computer and slowly installing kernel modules and whatnot, and once it was up, that was fine. So the second problem I had is once it installed, I chose KDE as my desktop, and lo and behold, it boots up and I get a black screen. So I again Control Alt to another terminal, open up a command line and type in this command, okay, and this is actually the same program as this one here, but in text mode. And the first option, online update, click on that. As you can see, I've got some updates now. Okay, so when you've got a fresh version install, you'll do the same if you experience the same issue, or even if you don't. Okay, online update, I won't do it, I'll just do it through the text mode now. And once I installed, and it was a lot of binaries, I think it was 2 gigs or so, ever since then, I swear this distribution has not let me down in terms of stability. It has not crashed once. It has accepted all the third-party software perfectly. First time, it's been absolutely stellar. I'm really happy with it, and I'm going to go into more reasons as to why I'm happy for it. So, hey, why don't I just update that now? Okay, so they're updating. I'm updating my operating system now. All right, so that's that done. Now, KDE. Oh man, I do like this. Okay, so I'm more from I don't like all these new trendy gnomes and KDEs that have come out, and I was really excited being a KDE 3 fan in terms of functionality that this one looked really nice. The eye candy was nice. Like, I like these sort of faded windows and whatnot that you get, and just the look and feel of it. I like transparency, and it just looks polished. The thing I didn't like is by default it's widget based, and if you recall that Windows 7 actually came out with some a few widgets in Windows Vista, I think it was, and everyone hated them. Well, KDE by default takes that a step further and makes it actually completely widget based. And I, like to create a desktop icon, it wasn't working for me. I was really frustrated. So the thing that ended my frustration was if you just right click on the desktop folder view settings and go here and change your layout to folder view, this will give you that sort of classic desktop that you're after, or that you might be after. And it's just sort of an XP style thing. Anything in your desktop directory is mapped here. I've put symlinks to various things. Anything you do in the command line is obviously updated in the GUI, so it's great. The other thing I really like about it is it's got that whole Windows 7 thing where a bit more though, like at the top left we'll put the window here. If you go to the left it will put it there, that sort of things. You've got two desktops that you can flip through, which is quite nice. There it goes back to my other one. So yeah, overall I think it's I really like this sort of look and feel. Very happy with the KDE experience. It's sort of a Windows 7 interface. If I want to search for anything like Dropbox, there it is. That, by the way, was included in those third-party repos. No complicated sort of install that I had to do there. Really happy with that. In terms of Chrome, that was, I think, I downloaded that off Google. It set it up a repo for me once I had installed it, and it asked for a few dependencies that I was able to find in the software management just here. So that was a 5-minute job. Skype was a little bit more challenging. There's a guide to it online. Just type in SuSe Leap Skype on Google. It'll give you a few commands to run. The reason why it's a little bit more difficult is Skype's actually a 32-bit application. Since Microsoft bought it, they haven't seemed to make any more updates for Linux, so we're stuck on an ancient client which is in 32-bit. So you actually have to install a whole lot of legacy 32-bit libraries, which is just perhaps a little bit more challenging. It's, I think, 3 commands of dependencies. You install the Skype, and away you go. Okay, so what else was there that I wanted to talk about? Other things about KDE I like. If you hold your mouse up to the top left, you can configure sort of shortcuts. I've made that to lock my screen, just like for my Mac at work. I've got hotkeys. Alt-T opens up a terminal. That was really nice. I am in the habit of, with Grub, always right-clicking open terminal. It's just one of those habits that I've got into. But hotkeys are probably faster anyways. I don't know why that they make this sort of stuff impossible to customize. I mean, it is Linux. It would be awesome if there was a JSON file or an XML file that you could just add optional sort of details to. And I guess if you stuffed it up, it wouldn't render. That's fine. But just having that option to really customize your desktop like you can in the command line would be fantastic. So, what else? Oh, and yeah, this friggin' awesome. I love this terminal. I was a putty boy when I used to use Windows for desktops and Linux for servers. This is great. Like the fact that I can just, anytime I want to open up a terminal, I can just open up one and by splitting the screen. I don't think tabs work for terminals. I think screen splits are a lot better. The other thing I would say is it's also written in Python. So just let me have a look here. It's called Terminator, by the way. Yeah, so I edited the source code. So the wonderful thing about this, it is in an interpreted language, so you can edit it on the fly. So I just changed these 2 mouse buttons because I am a putty boy. Originally, I can't get out of the habit of, I guess, right-click paste. So right-click is my paste button for this terminal, and to make those changes was very nice. So that's on line 858 to 867. Obviously, if your package manager updates that, then it's going to get overridden. Awesome pull request to do to that open source project. I might even do it myself in terms of once I've got enough Python skills to have a checkbox button in the options. Maybe that might be something that they'll accept. I don't know. And my Python isn't up to scratch at this point to do that. So let me quit. Okay, so and SuSe puts it in there. Okay, So it's in a Python library package. Friggin' awesome. I just love this terminal. Like it more than iTerm2 in Mac, and I certainly like it more than Putty. What else is there? Okay, so in terms of why I like using a Linux desktop is mainly just for the security and stability. I really hate setting them up once they're set up to my liking, and there's nothing there that sort of bugs me. It's like if there's something there that bugs me in a desktop, it's like having a pebble in my foot. I can't get on with my life, and it just eats away at me when I get home. I just want it to be nice, and once it is nice, I really don't like change. So with Linux, what I love about it is once you install your desktop, it just doesn't get slower. The other thing is, so long as you don't stuff up those repositories and just stick to the ones officially given by SuSe, your chances of getting malware is next to nil. Now, Linux Mint got hacked, I think, not long ago, where they put in some corrupt ISOs. So that's the way that you can sort of get your system compromised with Linux. But generally speaking, it's a lot safer, provided something like that doesn't happen. Okay, so you know, your risk is significantly less. And like I said, your machine doesn't slow down. Why do I prefer it more than Ubuntu? Because Ubuntu is a sort of desktop centric distro, or that it comes with one. Look, the thing with Ubuntu, like I mentioned, is I feel that they've kind of I don't feel like I'm in a Linux system when I'm on it. Like if you look at here, I'm in just a normal run level. Okay, so 5 is the GUI run level. 3 is text mode. Ubuntu uses number 2, which is a custom one, which is sort of reserved by the standards. They use that as their GUI. I couldn't seem to leave run levels when I used it at an old job. Someone set up Ubuntu desktop as a server. So having a desktop sitting around wasn't necessary. I couldn't seem to get rid of it and just keep the service that server was providing. So I got rid of the server and installed Red Hat on that. So just generally, and like I mentioned as well, I don't like packages bossing around files in Linux. I like files bossing around packages, and quite often when I'm in an Ubuntu box and I think, oh, I might change this daemon here, I find, hey, you can't edit this file because some other random binary, manages that file, which then controls some other configuration within your system. Now, how that differs from YAST is these are just text wrappers, okay? It's like the system config in Red Hat. If you change something in a text file, it should be replicated here. Now, I have had times when that isn't true, when I've done very complicated server setups and this can't sort of keep up. But then again, I prefer Red Hat for my sort of distribution of choice for servers. So as far as desktops, this is ideal. Like I can interact with the GUI, I can interact with the text, it's fine either way, and there's that sort of the coupling works sort of pretty good. Okay, it's not sort of merged, or it's not like the GUI is the way to control things. It's just a wrapper to the text files. So that's another thing I like. One final thing is I really am a big fan of AppArmor. So this is a command that shows me all my daemons that are running in AppArmor. So this one here, for example, NTPD is the daemon that keeps my time in sync. Now, generally speaking, up until recently, you needed a NTP, I think, needed to run as root. So what AppArmor actually does is restrict the calls that daemon can make. So as root, it can change the time, right? But it shouldn't be able to do other things. So if that NTP daemon gets corrupt for any reason, it's very limited to what it actually can do. So let me have a look. But right now, I don't know how they've done it. I think NTP runs as its own user. So how it actually changes the time, I'm not sure, but that's genius in itself. But AppArmor also gives you sort of other benefits as well. So it will restrict the way in which you can. It restricts the way in which daemons can, or what they can do. So I might say with this NTP that you can only talk to these 10 files. So if it does get compromised and tries to write stuff to send to Apache, to send to some spammer or whatever, the app armor will actually stop that if that daemon is exploited. Now, I only mention that because Red Hat uses SE Linux, and the first, which is sort of the answer to Novell App Armor. My experience is SE Linux is so restrictive and annoying that lots of people switch it off on their servers. App Armor, even in a server context, provides extra sort of security, but I've never really had it once interfere with me, preventing me doing what I want to do and thinking that I'm sort of violating security. So App Armor is awesome. I'll just see if I've got any. I did actually see the. Let's have a look. Yeah, so this is where they're stored, all the profiles. Okay, so you can they've done pre ones here. This is the one for NTP, and these are all the things and access that SuSe believes that AppArmor should be able to talk to, all these files and no others. So it can execute this, it can read and write to this drift file, but if it tries to do other things, it's stopped. So that's just peace of mind. I like AppArmor being enabled on my box, particularly that there doesn't seem to be any downside to it. Ubuntu and Debian, I believe, have opted as well for AppArmor. Red Hat is and CentOS, Red Hat clones are the only ones that sort of feature SE Linux as their answer to enhanced security. But yeah, so just I'm just making the point that while SuSe was the creators of AppArmor, they're certainly not the only ones to implement it. Being open source, anyone can just take sort of AppArmor and put it on their own distribution. So yeah, the other point is, I think this Leap has 3 years worth of support, so I only have to go through the drudgery of setting up a desktop every 3 years, which is fantastic. I think it might be a little bit more than 3, but yeah, by that time the next one's out, and when I have a bit of free time, I can then sort of spend, a day setting up a VM, testing it out. Do I like it? Yeah, I do. No, I don't. And then away I go and install. So yeah, really enjoyable and pleasurable sort of desktop experience. I like coming home and just using this. Had it not been for games and perhaps a little bit of hardware support, I would love to be off Windows completely. I dual boot to Windows at the moment in addition to SuSe, and when I want to play StarCraft 2, Windows is great, but for general internet, I rate the SuSe operating system and Linux in general way more. So yeah, that's my review. 5 stars, way better than OpenSUSE, 1,000 times better. I can pick the GUI I want, customize it just how I want, use the tools that I want, feel like I'm in a Linux operating system, and yeah, it's my distribution of choice for desktops. Thank you.